Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, it's Michigan Monday, and I had this realization as we were just about ready to start recording. We only do one more of these this year, and then it's Michigan Saturday after that. So it is starting to get real, Tony.
Yeah, it is starting to get very real. One more Michigan Monday, then there's a Michigan Tuesday, then there's a Michigan Wednesday, and then a Michigan Thursday, and a Michigan Friday, and a couple of Michigan Saturdays, and there's a Michigan Sunday. But yes, it is here. Long ago, we recorded like a tale of the tape comparing the two teams well before the season, and now it's like we're almost there, and it's, it flies by every year. It should never be a surprise, but you always get to like week 10 or week 11, and it's like, well, it was snowing yesterday. Where did the summer go? Where did the fall go? And where did the season go? But here we are now, Michigan now 10-0, thanks in large part to their win over Nebraska, because if they hadn't, then they would be 9-1, as you know, Tom. 34-3 over the Huskers on Saturday. Tom, so many times this season, Michigan is playing an opponent that has, like, even against a competent defense, has no hope of moving the ball. And against Michigan, they have even less hope. But the number of quality offenses that Michigan has played and Ohio State has played, because there's nothing in the Big Ten, that in the Big Ten East at least. The best offense that either team has played so far is Penn State. Penn State is the 35th ranked total offense in the nation, and I don't know either of us would call them really good. Like, they've got some pieces, but like, this is another example of a terrible offense that Michigan gets to tee off on. But then that's what they do. They hold them under 100 yards rushing, 100 yards passing. They do that week in, week out, and this is another just dominating effort by Michigan.
I remember as a kid hearing about the Big 2 Little 8 days of the 1970s and going, wow, I wonder what that would be like. I wish I could see what that was like. And then a monkey paw curls, and here we are, 2022. Welcome to Big Ten football. Yeah, there was a stat, and I don't remember if it was yards per play or like SP plus defense. I was going through a bunch of stats, and there's one where there are 5 of the top 10 teams in the nation in defense are in the Big Ten, and it's like, wow, what an amazing conference. I wonder if that's the product of terrible offenses and, no quarterback play outside of like 2.5 guys. And the answer is, sure is. Yeah, Michigan. I was the most disappointing part of the game, the Michigan-Nebraska game to me, going back and rewatching it, was Chubba Purdy getting hurt, because it was like maybe they had found something with the quarterback run, just running those like quarterback draws, and it's just one of those, you're obviously not going to be able to run that 60 times, but how will Michigan adjust to that? What are they going to do? How are they going to And then he gets hurt. And then, like 3 plays later, poor Mark Whipple gets, I don't know, his knee blown out on the sidelines. And then it's like, okay, the second half, the Michigan defense is already pretty incredible in the second half. And then it's third-string quarterback and second-string offensive coordinator who is standing on the sideline without a play sheet. It's like, oh yeah, this is going to go great. This is all going to be extremely relevant information for us to analyze in terms of what it will mean for Ohio State.
This is not the first time I believe Michigan has knocked out a quarterback. I do believe it is the first time they have knocked out an offensive coordinator this season. At one point, Mark Whipple, you see him like he's being held up by a couple of assistants to the assistant, I guess it would be, and he's got his play sheet. And it reminded me of the Byron Leftwich thing after he hurt his leg and the offensive line would carry him down the field. I thought maybe they'll have to carry Mark Whipple from line of scrimmage to line of scrimmage, but they decided not to do that, because you watch that poor guy like try to put weight on his knee and he would just buckle, or his leg or whatever it was, and they'd just like go down, and it's like, well, you didn't expect that one in play sheet. It's the next man up sort of thing. You don't like, okay, say we lose our offensive coordinator. What do we do in that situation? Like, well, how would we lose our offensive coordinator? And Tom, that is why I've always said, you got to keep those guys up in the booth.
You know what? You looked at that and it was like, there's an argument to be made in terms of just being able to see the whole field and all that. There's also an argument to be made in that you're not going to probably get your leg run into if you were up in the booth. So yeah, that was that was unfortunate for Nebraska, and you hope Mark Whipple's okay. I have not seen an update on his condition, but yeah, that was like, okay, this is something we haven't really seen teams do, and the quarterback run game. We have seen teams use that against Ohio State to some success recently. Northwestern had a little bit of success with that. Indiana had a little bit of success with that. Again, it's not something that's going to be something you can run 30 times and you run your whole offense off of, but it's at least a change up, and maybe it opens up something else downfield. And nope, didn't get to see it. As soon as Logan Smothers came in, it was like, well, that's over.
Well, and remember, I grew up in the 80s and 90s of this rivalry where Michigan would just assert their dominance through violence, and whether that would be like just on one play, we're just going to run through the punt returner. We'll take the 15 yards, doesn't matter. I still, in my mind, I see in 1996 senior day, Lloyd Carr sending the team out and running over Greg Belisari and his family, or just Greg Belisari at that point, the last senior to be introduced. And now I'm thinking, after seeing Michigan take out an offensive coordinator, Ryan Day better watch his front. You've got the get back coach. You're going to need somebody to keep everybody clear of him from that sideline, because this game means a lot to Jim Harbaugh and his players, and Ryan Day better watch out.
Well, there was the cameraman in 2017 or 17, who went after JT Barrett's knee, famously. Urban Meyer doing his what's the Harrison Ford movie with
Fugitive?
The Fugitive, yes. Tommy Lee Jones. Urban Meyer doing his every outhouse, hen house, big house, find that man kind of thing. Yeah, that was tremendous. Yes. Speaking of the 1990s, Tony, was the Aflac trivia question on that broadcast the single worst trivia question you have ever seen? I don't know if you noticed. You may have zipped past it. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to see if you can answer this. And Tony, you're going to have to put on your thinking cap for this one. Tony, what is the significance of the year 1997 for both teams in today's game? And again, the hint to you, Tony, is the two teams in the game were Nebraska and Michigan.
Wow. Wow, that's a spicy one, Tom. Yes, 1997, the year Nebraska won a national championship and Michigan won a half a national championship.
Michigan went to the Rose Bowl. That was good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can hear the downvote. I can hear the downvotes on YouTube from the Michigan fans already. Sorry, we're just kidding.
It's a joke. Stop screwing with the algorithm. Yeah, so there's quite a bit to talk about with this Michigan win over Nebraska, and we're obviously working during the game, and I got home Saturday night and I look at the box score and I see Blake Corum with 28 carries in a game that Michigan was never threatened in. And I just, tweeted out, like, why is Blake Corum carrying the ball 28 times against Nebraska? Like, what's going on there? And I get a lot of responses about, what it's about. I'm like, no, that's why I'm asking, what is this about? And I guess there's the Heisman being involved. And I remember you and I talking during the post-game show, like, this game matters not in the Heisman. The Heisman will be decided in Columbus in terms of Blake Corum's place and CJ Stroud's place. But then you watch the game, you see Donovan Edwards is a little banged up. He only carries the ball twice. The conditions weren't ripe for throwing the ball, but what conditions are ripe for Michigan throwing the ball? So I still think 28 carries in this game is way too many. Yeah.
I mean, Edwards having only 2 carries, okay, he's banged up, okay, that's fine. CJ Stokes, I mean, he had 8, but they were all very late. I think they were all in the, it was 31-3, that drive. I think if he had been hanging onto the ball, if he'd hung onto the ball like Dallin Hayden's hung onto the ball, you probably see him getting a Dallin Hayden number of carries in that game. That's probably part of it. I don't know if there's anyone beyond Donovan Edwards who they really, really trust in that moment. To your point about the weather, I looked up the official on the box score for both teams. So the one that Michigan put out, the one that Ohio State put out. The weather was 1 degree off. It was 1 degree warmer in Michigan than it was in Columbus. The wind was 2 miles an hour off. And I mean, just from watching, I watched the games back to back on TV, and they were, the snow looked about the same. It was like, that's about as identical as conditions get. And I mean, I was on the field for the Ohio State game, and that was it wasn't like the single nicest day. It wasn't like, let's go have a picnic kind of weather, but it was fine. It wasn't frigidly cold. It wasn't gale force winds like it was for Ohio State Northwestern. The snow was like, it was snow, but it wasn't incredible. And it was, not there for the whole game. It just, that felt like that was a week when weather shouldn't have materially impacted your offense. It certainly didn't for Ohio State. And, so that, it really makes me wonder. Michigan keeps coming out and trying to show you that they can throw the ball down the field. And they keep showing you that, if the guy's wide open, like Ronnie Bell was wide open downfield, yeah, he can make that throw. Anytime guys are in tight coverage, it's just, if there is a defensive back there, the ball gets, he overshot guys consistently. And again, this was not super windy. It was just, he looks like he's very concerned about making a mistake downfield. And so then he overshoots guys. And, there was one that was sort of juggled. I look at that and I really wonder if they're not able to consistently throw the ball downfield, then at least, have them be 50-50 balls where you're completing half of the contested ones. Are they going to have the luxury of wasting downs against Ohio State to just be like, well, look, we can throw the ball downfield and now it's 2nd and 10. I don't know if they have the luxury of doing that against Ohio State if JJ McCarthy can't do it. And he really hasn't shown that he can do it unless the guy's wide open.
Yeah, he was 8 of 17 for 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, sacked twice. I think 9 of his 17 passes went more than 10 yards downfield. He completed just 4 of those. And even we've talked about who is their guy that catches 50-50 balls. In my opinion, that would be Cornelius Johnson, because he's like the biggest, most physical guy. But on the one deep shot that I'm thinking about now, he pretty much stopped running and then jumped and twisted his body to try and catch something that he could have just, there was an easier way to catch it. So it's like, I don't even know if you can trust that guy to be a consistent 50-50 catcher, whatever that means. But also there, the 50-50 nature of the ball, you're right. The overthrowing of it. So yeah, you don't even want to give the defense an opportunity. It's not a 50-50 ball if nobody has a shot at it. And right now I appreciate that they're trying to work out the kinks, and you can't just, well, we're not going to throw it deep until we get to Ohio State. You need to continue to do this, and they are. So they're trying to get it to work, but it just isn't. And I'm just looking at, he had a completion that was 19 yards in the air, one that was 17, one that was 14, and one that was 10. Anything beyond that, he missed one, through 26 yards downfield, 56 yards downfield, 32 yards, 33 yards, 30. Like, all of these are incompletions, and I don't know that many of them are close. And it's just, it's such a contrast from watching like Quinn Ewers, who's just like not putting any zip on stuff, trying to throw it. And this guy, JJ McCarthy, putting all of the zip on, trying to get it to places, and it's just not going. And, 8 of 17, they threw the ball 20 times in the game, ran it 40 times, and Luke Schoonmaker, their number 2/number 1 tight end, wasn't playing, so they're probably down their most productive receiver other than Ronnie Bell at this point. And so they were missing guys, but the lack of playmaking, the lack of abilities to hit those shots downfield, I continue to wonder, and say, you have to make JJ McCarthy beat you. Ohio State will have to make JJ McCarthy beat you. 7-8 in the box, and against Blake Corum, and hold on for dear life. Blake Corum's long run was 12 yards in this game. If Ohio State holds Blake Corum to 12 yards as a long run, I'd put their chances of winning, 70%, 80%, something like that.
Yeah, and he's someone who, he was not a flashy, but he was very efficient. And that was kind of an interesting thing to me, because I wondered about that. Because, if you hold him under, if he doesn't have a long run, that obviously helps Ohio State quite a bit. But he's also so good at getting the 3, 4, 5 yard runs and, getting him to the ground. I had the thought, watching Tommy Eichenberg just mauling Indiana's running backs, I can't wait to see Tommy Eichenberg versus Blake Corum. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it is going to be awesome either way. I'm really looking forward to that kind of one-on-one matchup in the run game. Corum is interesting to me because the fact that he is so consistent with 3, 4, 5, 6 yards, if they want to take a shot downfield on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 5 or whatever, you saw Harbaugh taking some, there was a drive where it was 3rd and 6, and they ran Corum on 3rd and 6 because he's going to pick up 4 yards, and then it's 4th and 2, and then you can pick up 2 yards on 4th and 2. That kind of changes how you can call plays. That is a little bit of something that might be able to maybe help keep them, staying on schedule is very important in a game like the Ohio State Michigan game. Not getting behind the chains, not falling off schedule. The schedule changes if the schedule includes 4 downs, because normally you want 4 yards on 1st down and at least half of the distance on 2nd down, of the remaining distance on 2nd down. That's sort of hitting what you need to do. And if they really are going to go for it on 4 downs, that kind of changes the math there a little bit. And Corum is so good at picking up the 4 yards and 5 yards that maybe changes things a little bit. The other thing on the downfield passing, they keep throwing it downfield and it keeps not working. But they had the sideline report during that Michigan game where Jim Harbaugh talked about the fact that the Ohio State Michigan game is going to come down to who gets better the next couple weeks. And you can tell they know they're going to need that. They know they're going to need to be able to throw the ball against Ohio State downfield, because that's one of the places where Ohio State's defense has been vulnerable. We've seen a pretty good Ohio State run defense this year. You have seen them get burned on some deep stuff. Indiana hit a big one against them. And it's sort of been like consistently 1 or 2 a game. You've seen one, if Michigan can get that, that's potentially there, but you got to be able to throw it. And you can see Michigan sort of recognizing Jim Harbaugh knows that they're going to have to do that against Ohio State. So they're going to keep working at it until they can do it. And the question is, does that come together? Does that click before the Ohio State game?
There seemed to be some confusion here and there in the passing game after the fact, where J.J. McCarthy would be like trying to explain something. I think it was Robert Griffin doing the color, talking about some of the receivers looking for the back shoulder stuff rather than looking for something over the shoulder. And you contrast that with the way, and it's probably not fair to compare anybody to Marvin Harrison Jr., but the way Ohio State has been able to operate over, even before him, obviously, with the communication, back shoulder stuff. And yeah, this is J.J. McCarthy's first year, and maybe you can't expect them to be on the same page, but you saw that same page last year with CJ Stroud and his receivers, where, whether it was front shoulder, back shoulder, over the shoulder, they're not there yet. And there's, the issues continue, and, not having Luke Schoonmaker actually was an issue. And because then you're getting to your 4th tight end to be your 2nd tight end. And you saw Blake Corum get blown up at one point because Joel Honigford, the 4th tight end, who I believe used to be an offensive lineman, when he came to Michigan, then moved to tight end as a blocker, wasn't able to get a block. And, so as it seems silly to discuss maybe the tight end depth, but I don't know what the situation is with Luke Schoonmaker. It seems like Eric, all the reports were like he's done for the season. And so he's kind of been the forgotten guy. I know they really, really like Colston Loveland. He had 2 catches for 40 yards in this one. He's going to be the next guy, but it's not enough to have 1 tight end for Michigan. And it's not enough at times to have 2. You need 3. And, they're down to their 4th guy right now, and it cost them at least 1 play in this game.
Well, yeah, I was trying to Google anything on Luke Schoonmaker because I was wondering the same thing. I was going to ask you, and it sounds like there is no answer on how long is he out. If he's out for the Ohio State game, that's a big deal, because we have talked about the fact that you can't build your whole offense around throwing to the tight end. You can, that's like having a good changeup in baseball. Like, that's fine, but if that's the only pitch you got, like, eventually that stops working. It does. I do wonder where that is, and I'm sure Jim Harbaugh is going to be extremely forthright about his status this week. Not only are we not expecting him back this week, but also next week, and there's been no real public indication on the severity of that injury. So that's definitely going to be something to watch. Loveland was fine. He looks a little, just looking at him, he looks a little undersized. Like, I don't know if he's someone who, can you have him be out there as the edge blocker on, for Corum? I don't, maybe not. He doesn't look Eric All sized. So that's at least something to be concerned about. And, there's a reason. If he was third or fourth on the depth chart, there's a reason. The coaches have told you they do not think he's as good as Eric Hall or Luke Schoonmaker. So nothing against him, but I'm sure they would like to get Luke Schoonmaker back for the Ohio State game, if not before. You mentioned RG3, and I have not watched a lot of RG3 games this year. I greatly, like, I'm sure he is one of those people who is just all 5-star ratings or 1-star ratings. But I loved watching his keys to the games included Rubik's Cube McThickums. He kept calling Blake Corum McThickums, and Diversify Your Bonds, which is a fantastic Wu-Tang financial callback from I think RG3 and I watched a lot of the same TV 20 years ago. But yeah, HBO, the HBO play that Andrew Anthony made in the end zone to help a brother out. Man, I greatly enjoyed the RG3 experience. Mark Jones has never been one of my favorites, but man, those two guys are fantastic together. That is a great booth.
RG3 loves being there, and that's what I love about him. Like, he has such energy and just enjoys all of this, and has, been able to have a couple of careers, the football career, and then, it starts great, doesn't end great, and then he comes to college football and just embraces it. And, I like seeing that, I like his energy. Tom, the Michigan defense, let's talk about that for now, for a bit, because I'm looking at their total defense game by game all year long. Do you know which opponent from against Michigan this year ran for the most yards?
It feels like the answer is going to be whoever it is and 112 yards or something like that. Was it Penn State?
Penn State ran for 111 yards. Hawaii ran for 140 yards. Season high.
So Ohio State's way better than Hawaii, so it sounds like Michigan's doomed. All right, back to you.
That'll do it for the show today, everybody. At this point, Connecticut maybe like their third best win, but the reason I bring that up is we started out talking about how Ohio State and Michigan are not playing any good offenses this season. Michigan's defense has not yet played an offense that has produced a 500-yard game against a Power 5 opponent.
That's not that many yards. That's like a, wow, that was a pretty solid day. That's not like, wow, amazing, break the scoreboard game. 500 yards is like, yeah, that was a good solid day.
Exactly. It's like you need to be a good offense to do that. You don't need to be great offense. You just need to be a good offense and have a good day. They have not faced any of those. They have not given up 300 yards passing to an opponent yet. 269 was the high for Maryland on the season. They've had 2 games of under 100 yards passing given up, and they've had 7 games under 100 yards rushing. And this one, they gave up 75 yards rushing to Nebraska and 71 yards passing. So it's the second time this season that they've held an opponent under 100 yards passing and rushing. The first being Connecticut, whom they beat 59-0. But as I run through all of and we'll just base this on total offense rankings. So they've played 10 teams at this point. 8 of them are in the bottom 86 or 86 or worse. And that's Nebraska is the 86th ranked offense. They've played 6 teams ranked in the 100s, and that's not including 99 Hawaii. So Maryland at 63rd is the second best offense they've faced. And if you look at what Maryland has done the last 2 weeks, where they've produced like maybe 350 yards total in 2 games, this Michigan defense it may be great. We don't know yet.
It's so fascinating because, 7 that were 99th or worse, and then Nebraska at 86 is like, yes, they are the 86th offense, which is obviously extremely good, but also they had their third quarterback in and their backup offensive coordinator. I mean, like, that's it's not great. It's so fascinating to me that we keep looking at these games. We watch every snap of every game for Ohio State and Michigan, and it's still like there's a little bit of an exciting mystery about what is going to happen in this year's game, because Ohio State has, both teams beat Penn State, and okay, they looked pretty, they looked pretty good against Penn State, and Michigan obviously looked better, but they had them in Ann Arbor, and we've had this whole conversation. But, Ohio State, their second best win is against Notre Dame, which is looking like any better and better win, except that was a different Notre Dame quarterback, and, week 1, and so, yeah, it is. Ohio State has not faced a lot of tremendous defenses. Michigan has not faced a lot of tremendous defenses or tremendous offenses. Ohio State has not faced a lot of tremendous offenses. It's just, it feels like there's so much that's kind of it depends still with this game, which is just so intriguing to me.
Well, and we said weeks ago, after Ohio State had 2 weeks where they couldn't run the ball, what we see between now and Michigan doesn't really matter how well they run the ball. Now, seeing what they did against Indiana, it's encouraging if you're a Buckeye fan that, okay, well, the running game being stopped has stopped. That doesn't mean it's going to continue to go on after, for the Michigan game. It just means like they seem to have figured something out. But will they figure Michigan out? That's the real question that we don't know yet. And every week we're like, well, we'll know more after this week. And you get done with the week and you're like, we still don't know as much as we'd like about either team. And I said that Michigan has not faced any offenses that have produced 500 yards against the Power 5 opponent. Ohio State has faced 3, but Northwestern is 2 of those. Like Northwestern has done it twice to Nebraska and Duke. Does that mean anything? Notre Dame, I believe, did it to North Carolina. Does that mean anything against North Carolina's defense? Not really. And Wisconsin has done it once, I believe, to Northwestern, which, again, what does that tell us? It's just a number where, it's not necessarily an arbitrary number. It's 500 is a real thing. Like the coaches want it. And if you give up 500 yards, you're playing poor on defense. But to not face any opponents that have been capable of that tells me the numbers are inflated. It does not tell me that Ohio State's going to put 500 yards on Michigan by any means. It just tells me that we're going to know much more, obviously, when these two teams play, and we don't know enough right now to expect. Like, Ohio State and Michigan are much different animals than either of those teams have faced, I guess is what I'm trying to say, Tom.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're going from Michigan facing no one who can throw the ball at all, especially downfield, to CJ Stroud. I mean, again, I watched the Michigan and Ohio State games back to back, and it was like, you look at CJ Stroud throwing a deep ball to Marvin Harrison, it's like, what has prepared Michigan for that? There's nothing that could possibly have prepared Michigan for this that's on their schedule so far this year. And this is 2 years in a row that I've thought, I don't know how good Michigan's secondary is. Like, I know the numbers are okay, but last year I felt like they skated by a lot because they had David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson giving quarterbacks about 1.3 seconds to get rid of the ball, and that limits your options in the passing game. And they have not faced that worked great last year where they got pressure on CJ Stroud and he didn't have time. Can they do that again this year? Because this is another week where, it was just one, but there was another long pass completed on DJ Turner this week. And, Nebraska's wide receivers, I don't want to hurt any feelings here, but I don't think Nebraska's wide receivers are as good as Ohio State's wide receivers. And I don't think Nebraska's quarterback, even if he is the legendary Chubba Purdy, I don't think he is as good as CJ Stroud. So can Michigan get the pressure this year to protect that back seven? Or are we going to finally find out? Maybe they can stand up to that kind of test because they really just haven't been tested that much. That's another one of those big mysteries. I have for 2 years thought they can get got downfield if, but even last year, Georgia, that's not what Georgia really does. So even in the college football playoff, they didn't. So, I have said several times this year, I think Tennessee would be a very bad matchup for Michigan in the college football playoff. It doesn't sound real likely that those two teams would somehow get paired, but, that type of team could be a bad matchup for Michigan, and Ohio State could be that type of team. Then the question is, so, Tony, how good is the Ohio State rush defense? Is it as improved as we think it is? Or, that's the thing. Those are, to me, like the two biggest questions. The Michigan pass defense, the Ohio State run defense, are they as for real as the stats would tell you? Because I legitimately don't 100% feel like I know the answer. Yeah,
I'm with you. Ohio State has gone about changing the things that kept them from winning the Michigan game last year. Michigan, we thought they were improving the offense by bringing J.J. McCarthy in. They're still, the offense may be improved by J.J. McCarthy's running ability, so they have improved some stuff. But I think Michigan is more of that same team. But as they were last year. Ohio State's a bit different, but we don't know how different because, the teams that they faced when they faced them, like facing Wisconsin now, may be different than facing them when Ohio State did. And so you don't know. I'm just looking at, you mentioned Michigan facing the passing attacks that they've faced. They've faced 6 teams in the bottom 100 to 131 pass efficiency this season. Ohio State, obviously number 2 behind Tennessee. Again, much different animals. And I still, if there's a year, Tom, where the yard per carry metric loses out, it would be this one, provided Ohio State can protect CJ Stroud. I think if they can protect him, I don't want to say it doesn't matter how much they run for, but I think you'll give the Ohio State offense a chance to take it to the Michigan secondary.
Well, if you can protect CJ Stroud, if Ohio State can protect CJ Stroud and give him time to throw the ball downfield, I think the yards per carry thing will follow, because they are going to ultimately want to run the ball one way or the other. It feels like this is a year, I mean, and when we talk about the yards per carry metric, if you are new-ish to the show, for the last, going back to 2002, I think, the team in the Ohio State-Michigan game that runs for more yards per carry has won the game every single year. There was one year where they ran for the same number of yards per carry, and it was like a very close game. I think that was 2013 or 12. But every other year, the team that has run for more yards per carry has won the Ohio State-Michigan game. And 20 years of trend that never changes is, kind of significant. It feels like this is a year where if Ohio State runs for more yards per carry than Michigan, there's not really a way Michigan can win without, being +4 in turnovers or something like that. If Michigan runs for more yards than Ohio State, but it's at least kind of close, I could see this being the year that trend ends. Now, if Michigan outrushes Ohio State by 4 yards per carry, you're like, okay, yeah, Michigan's probably winning that game. Because Michigan, the Blake Corum 4 yards, 5 yards kind of thing, I was watching that and thinking, boy, that's, if they can do that against Ohio State, I'm sure they would love to do that against Ohio State and keep the Ohio State offense off the field and, not have this be a 15 possession game, but have it be a 12 possession game or 11 possession game and, make each of those individual possessions mean that much more, which then it turns into a red zone game. And who can score in the red zone? Michigan was much more efficient. They've kind of, both teams have kind of struggled in the red zone at times in terms of trying to run the ball in. Michigan found a very clever workaround, which was just throwing the ball. They ran a play action pass to Ronnie Bell, and he was wide open. Ohio State did the same thing to Cade Stover in their game, where it was just, everyone's selling out to stop the run, and then there's a guy who just leaks out and is just wide open in the end zone. So that's I think you're going to probably see some throwing into the end zone in that Ohio State-Michigan game, and maybe even throwing in short yardage situations for the Buckeyes, because they have not really excelled there, and there is another way to do it. You don't have to do it the way that everyone has done it for 50 years. Yeah,
and J.J. McCarthy threw into the end zone the previous week, did it again this week. Michigan also choosing to fumble into the end zone as a nice workaround. So I wouldn't recommend that every week, but it worked this time. Well, everything works against Nebraska, as we know. A couple of other notes that I had, just looking through here as I scroll through. Michigan ran the hurry up at the end of the half, and when I say run the hurry up, they were running the ball. It's okay to throw the ball. I mean, if you want to hurry up, throw the ball. This lack of trust, in JJ McCarthy, after this many games, I don't know that he's as advanced as he should be and as he needs to be right now.
Yeah, I have that same note. Even in a 2-minute drill, they're running it, and they took one shot at the end zone, and the throw was not anywhere close, and they settled for a field goal. But I have a note here where they're either playing it like they know it's not a big deal if they don't get 6, because they were up 14-3 at that point, and were getting the ball in the second half and have allowed like 6 points in the second half all year, or whatever the ridiculous stat is. And, it's either that or they just don't trust JJ McCarthy. And, the only bad thing that can happen there is like a pick 6. That's really the only thing that could really, really hurt you. And that's essentially what happened in the Penn State game, where they dominated the whole first half and then went in at halftime and it was like 16-14 because they had the one pick 6 and then the one long run for Sean Clifford. I really do wonder how much they trust McCarthy in big spots, because they're sure acting like they don't trust McCarthy. And you should be, this is the end of your, yes, it's your second year. He played more last year than CJ Stroud did in his freshman year. And, so now this is week 10, week 11 of your sophomore year. And you have been like clear cut the starter since September. You should, they should be able to trust you to do that. And I think that would be, to me as a Michigan fan, that would be concerning that they don't. But also, if Blake Corum gets hurt, is that basically turn that into an automatic loss for Michigan? Or if JJ McCarthy gets hurt, does that turn that game into an automatic loss for Michigan? Because, you look at Ohio State losing running backs, dropping like flies. And, I think there's a way Ohio State beats Michigan without Travion Henderson or Mayan Williams or whoever. I don't know that Michigan beats Ohio State without Blake Corum, or I don't know if Michigan beats Ohio State without JJ McCarthy. CJ Stroud is probably on that list for me. Probably that if CJ Stroud got hurt, then that's probably a very bad sign for Ohio State. But it feels like Michigan has more potential failure points where if this one guy gets his ankle rolled up, that is a big, big, big problem. Because, if Davis Warren is your backup, I don't think that's probably going to go great.
Yeah, and I think you lose Blake Corum, and Donovan Edwards can do some very good things, but is he healthy? Can he do it for an entire game? So that's another concern. I would say another one of my notes here that I had early on, the Michigan offensive line was just pushing the Nebraska defensive line like 6-7 yards downfield. And it's easy to average 6 yards a carry when the offensive line gets 6 yards for you, and then you pick and choose. Then now it's time to go find a hole. Like the force field around me has dissipated. Now I will find a hole. And yeah, they dominated again they had Ryan Hayes back, but at left tackle, they're still like, it's not the offensive line they started the season with. I don't believe so. They've had to fill some holes and fill some gaps in, as many teams have, but continue to play well. And the Nebraska defensive line didn't have anything for them. Anything else that you have, Tom, before we get out of here?
Yeah, Carson Barnhart was still in there at right tackle, and he got beat with an edge rush. Now, I think they're expecting to get Jones back, so I don't think Carson Barnhart's probably going to be the starting right tackle for the Ohio State game, but that would be something that, that would be an area of concern as well if you've got him going against JT Tuimoloau.
All right, then. That will do it for today. I want to thank you all for joining us. As always, please check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. Say hello to us there on the message board. Check out all the recruiting info, the X's and O's, the in-depth stuff there, the team coverage, obviously, as well. And you can find us at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Subscribe there. Hit the bell to be notified when we go live, when we drop stuff, when we drop podcasts and live interviews, all that sort of stuff. Also, if you're watching now, please hit that thumbs up and give us a like. That helps us as well. It counterbalances all of the thumbs down from what Tom said earlier about bad stuff about Michigan. So, who's to say who said it? I don't know. Anyway, that will do it for today. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys later.